Now, Pauline Hanson, the founder and leader of One Nation, has had a hell of a win that we brought to you first here this time yesterday, with the government agreeing to have a full inquiry, a joint parliamentary inquiry into the family court and all sorts of issues around that. Pauline Hanson has not just won the inquiry, she's going to co-chair it along with former Liberal Minister Kevin Andrews. So I wanted to catch up with Pauline Hanson to talk to her about that. A couple of other things, though, that interest me about Pauline Hanson is what does she think of the climate strike on Friday? Also keen to find out what she thinks of her Senate colleague, Jacqui Lambie. I caught up with Pauline Hanson just a few moments ago. Pauline Hanson, congratulations on getting this inquiry into the family court. What do you hope to be the key outcomes from this process?
That we have a fairer family law court system, that people can get their cases heard quicker and sooner, that we have better outcomes for both sides, parents to have access to see their children. We have a fairer child support system. We have an investigation in the legal costs of taking it to court. And I want to stop the suicides and the murders that are happening.
It's a hell of an agenda, and I know you could talk for hours about this because you've been investigating and advocating on these issues for years. But what do you see as the key problems here? Who's losing out most and in what way?
Chris, it's been brought to my attention that fathers feel they're not being heard, they're not being given a fair go. It concerns me greatly when it's been brought to my attention that 3 fathers a day are suiciding over this, and not to forget that 1 woman is being murdered a week on average. That is not good enough in our society. When we see the road carnage on our roads, we actually move to do things about it. We impose fines or more policing, yet we have not done enough to stop this carnage that is happening through our family law court system, because it doesn't work. Even people to get heard on the floor, in the courtrooms, you know, they can't afford it. There's not enough legal support or legal aid. That's another issue. And then you've got, you know, the lies that are brought up to fight against either side in domestic violence orders that are imposed on people to further their case. It's not good enough, and we need to get to the bottom of it, give people the opportunity to have their voice heard in this inquiry, then hopefully with my other parliamentary colleagues that we can actually come to final recommendations that will make a difference to many people out there.
There are obviously difficulties with the family court system. There's difficulty with looking after children and parental rights there. There's difficulties with fathers in particular paying for their children, paying to support their children, child maintenance supports. Of course, there's domestic violence you mentioned then, and there's male suicide as well. Aren't these all separate issues? How are you going to wrap them all into one massive inquiry?
See, that is the problem. We have had these separate inquiries by the ALRC, the Australian Law Reform Commission actually did it, but that was only an inquiry into the family law. Then we had the KPMG, that was only into the costs. Then we had the Simple report that was only into the court structure. Whereas by pulling it all together, we get a fair and balanced view over the whole spectrum of it. And child support hasn't been discussed, and that needs a complete overhaul. It's an unfair system. It's antiquated, and it's not looking at why parents are giving up their work and don't want to work because of huge amounts of child support. Then you have the parents that don't even contribute to their children, don't pay for it. And, you know, it's not allowing people to get on with their lives. And that's why we need to actually find a way of dealing with these issues. I know it sounds very convoluted. There's a lot of issues. That's why I've stipulated it should actually go for at least a year to give people a chance to be heard on this. I was on the Senate inquiry last year into the merger of the 2 courts, the Federal Circuit Court and the Family Law Court. That was in a matter of days, and to make recommendations. It goes further than that, and that's why I want to give people plenty of time, that we don't rush our decisions, recommendations, to give people this chance, because this will be the first of a joint sitting of both houses to actually hear this inquiry.
Yeah, you mentioned that's why you want to go for a year or more. Presumably you're going to hear a procession of personal horror stories during this process.
Yes, and their stories have to be heard. Chris, because of the Family Law Court, the laws surrounding it, no one can actually speak of their case publicly for fear of actually repercussions and charges to be laid against them. So they can't speak about their cases. Whereas in the inquiry, they can actually express what's happened to them under the protection of, like parliamentarians are protected. So this is very important that we do get the truth, because not only can people talk about their cases, journalists can't report it. So we're not getting a fair and balanced view of what is happening in our society. So that's why it's very important to give the people of Australia a voice. Yes, it's going to take some time, because I don't want to shut it down too soon. I want to take it to every state and territory. I want to take it to not only the capital cities, but rural and regional areas, to people who feel they don't have an opportunity. So these are things that I'd like to, and this is what I will be presenting to my parliamentary colleagues to come to a decision what we want to do. It's not all about what Pauline Hanson wants. It's about working with my colleagues to get rid of the political divides. This is not about politics. It's about us working together for the betterment of the people out there, because this issue affects nearly every family in the country, if not a friend or someone. And you know what's important also is the grandparents that are denied the rights to see their children. And at the end of the day, Chris, this is all about the children. Children who are denied the right to spend time with their parents, whether it's the mums or whether it's the dads. We've got to get rid of the hate, the spitefulness, and I just, I'm passionate about this, but let's deal with the suicides and the murders that are happening.
Is one of the objectives here, Pauline, trying to find ways to keep people out of the family court system? And of course, sometimes it's unavoidable, but surely most of the time, mature adults, whether they've had relationships long-term or short-term with children and the like, ought to be able to resolve these issues themselves.
I totally agree with you. I put up on the floor of Parliament a private members' bill so that people actually have to try and mediate and sort out the differences before it goes in the court system. And this was through a portal. This is done with property rights, is also to do with 50-50 custody of the children. And that was just knocked on the head. Labor's response to it, to Senator Mick Dodson, it was just ridiculous. He said, this is ill thought of, and this won't work. I'd say to him, the Labor Party, well, what's your answers to it? Where's your what are you putting forward? Or your way of dealing with it? Don't do anything without giving it a go. And not only that, it's the cost to the families. It takes, in some cases, up to 6 years for a decision to be handed down. Outside, if you're dealing with it, it's about 23 months outside of the court system. So this is an easy way to actually get it heard and give the families a chance of moving on with their lives, get everything sorted out and settled. And yet they knocked it on the head. They weren't interested, and I think it's pathetic. The response was absolutely pathetic. On the floor of Parliament, there was no response whatsoever, and I think it's disgusting of the Labor Party of how they responded to my private members' bill.
Well, Pauline Hanson, this is a big political victory for you to get this inquiry up. You've been advocating and agitating, as you've just expressed, on this issue for many, many years. Has the government promised, have you promised the government anything in return? Is there any deal-making behind this inquiry?
Chris, this has been raised. I can tell you categorically, no deals have been done. I've put this to the first day that I met the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, about family law, and he said, oh, that's a tough one. George Brandis, oh, that's a tough one. And I kept fighting with him. That's why George Brandis did the inquiry into the Family Law Court and Federal Circuit Court of the merger of it, and continued by Christian Porter. That only happened because of my push for it. I put an argument forward and I state my case, whatever I do in this Parliament, for the people.
So there's no deal here, Pauline Hanson, there's no deal here, but obviously because the government's done this and given you a co-chairing role, obviously you're going to be more your predisposition is going to be more cooperative with the government, presumably.
No, I'm sorry. I still base my decisions on legislation based on its merit, what's right for the Australian people. Nothing changes there. I am so appreciative of the Prime Minister in actually, getting behind me and supporting this, but it's just not the Prime Minister. You ask a lot of the other backbenchers or ministers in this place and they will tell you family law is a big issue. They know something has to be done about it. And I've just kept pushing and pushing until, you know, common sense prevailed that we actually have to start doing something about it.
Just on other issues, you'll know, of course, you can probably barely contain your excitement that it's only 2 more sleeps now until the global strike for action on climate change on Friday. What are you doing for that event?
I certainly won't be going anywhere near it, and I don't encourage anyone to go to it at all. You know, have a look at the legislation that's being passed in this parliament and the state parliaments and the impact that it's having on our society. If you think that, you know, having a march is going to change global, you know, climate change is happening, but not because of humans emitting CO2s, which is 0.04% of all the Earth's gases, which is 3% of that is due to humans, and of that we are 1.3% of that 3%. What a ridiculous comment, you know, coming from the Greens, and those scientists, for their own self-interest, is pushing this agenda or political agenda or people to make a lot of money out of it.
Just finally, I just wanted to know what your thoughts were about Jackie Lambie. In many ways, she seems to have modelled her political career on yours. What are your thoughts about what she's doing and how much you can cooperate with her in the Senate?
Look, I've been talking to Jackie's staff this morning about her amendment that she's putting on the floor with the Treasury Laws Amendment Bill, superannuation. So we're having discussions there. If she puts up good amendments, the same as what I do, I hope that we get support. I put up an amendment the other day about income splitting, and she didn't vote for it because she didn't understand what it was about. And that's exactly what she told me on the floor of Parliament. I said, why didn't you vote for it? She said, well, I didn't understand. But, you know, it's about working together. Jackie represents Tasmania and I represent Queensland. And whatever happens on the floor of Parliament, we've got to, you know, work together for good legislation. You
mentioned, though, talking to her staffers. Do you ever sit down with Jackie and have a cup of tea and try and work things through?
No, I haven't sat down and had a talk to Jackie, you know, as such, in having a cup of tea. I have spoken to Jackie since I've, you know, been back in the Parliament, by all means, but I don't sit down with a lot of the senators at all. So, you know, I haven't even sat down with Rex Patrick. I haven't sat down with Cory Bernardi. So, you know, I hope you're not targeting because it's Jackie Lambie. You know,
no, it's just interesting.
Very busy schedules.
Yeah, you're all busy, and it's good to put that in context. But I'm interested just to find out how much you do swap ideas and chat with each other. But as you say, there are plenty of demands there while you're in Canberra. Thanks again for joining us, Pauline Hanson. Appreciate it.